Mike, we're going to play a game. It's called Good News, Bad News. I'm going to have you ask me, or I'm going to ask you good news or bad news. You ask me good news or bad news. You tell me. So good news or bad news?
Bad news. Let's do it.
Bad news? I burned my hand making pizza the other day.
Okay. What was the good? The pizza must have been good because that's probably the good news.
It was amazing. What's the good news?
What's the good news there, Brandon?
The Raiders aren't going to lose this week.
Yeah, they're on a bye. Of course not. And they're not playing the Chiefs. Of course.
Right. That's good news. Yeah. Good news or bad news? Ask me.
Good news.
You and I both made this next round of the playoffs in the Scott Fish Bowl 13 because we are ballers.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's start this, bro.
Well, what? Now you have to do the bad news.
What's the bad news?
It's Buymageddon! What up, everybody? It is me, Big Boned FFB, your host, and your other host, Mike Greinberg, FF Canuck 99, coming at you from the Dynasty Pros studios. Go ahead and grab yourself an adult beverage, preferably in a monogram glass. Today we are drinking Glendalough Irish whiskey. It's from the mountains of Wicklow, south of Dublin. It's a single pot still Irish whiskey. That's where the word whiskey comes from, is water of life, whiskey. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm just wondering where your everlasting jug of whiskey comes from. Like, do you have an where does it all come from? How do you have a new bottle every week?
The liquor store. I have a new bottle every week because I choose to have a new bottle every week for Big Boned's Whiskey Minute. Right here on DynastyProsFootball.com YouTube network.
Well, you asked me how I'm doing. I'm doing pretty good because, Chiefs coming off a big win. Big
It wasn't that big.
Yeah, it was because they got their offense back on track, and it was, their get-right game against their division rivals. So, I felt
it's not really a rivalry. A rivalry is when, there are two teams that are fairly equal against each other, but the Raiders, Mahomes is what, 6-0 in Vegas? Come on. That's not a rivalry.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. What's up? Well, we have some stuff to get to. Please, before we get into it, like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified when we drop on Saturday, and go ahead and share this around so, we get the algorithm going and we get more eyes on this prize. And with that, you got Greinberg with the news.
Yeah, so we are getting pretty darn close to these fantasy playoffs, 2 weeks away in most formats, and we have some things happening down the line here. So we have Frank Wright that got fired this week. He never wanted Bryce Young to begin with. He was destined to be the scapegoat in this situation. Another mid-season head coach firing. I mean, pretty surprising. I thought they'd give him the year here. What are your thoughts on that situation?
I wasn't surprised at all by the firing. I'm surprised that he lasted as long as he did. They were terrible. Out of the gate, and he was bad in Indy. There was no reason to hire him. Interesting news came out today, courtesy of the Raiders beat writer at Sports Illustrated, talking to sources. Apparently, McDaniels and Ziegler were at odds during the NFL draft, and Ziegler really wanted to trade up, and they had a trade in place to pop up and get C.J. Stroud at number 2. C.J. Stroud was a hair's breadth away from becoming a Raider and not a Carolina Panther. Not that would have changed his fortunes too much, because I can't imagine that it's a better line in Las Vegas than it was than it is in Carolina. But that was interesting. C.J. Stroud was a lucky boy that day.
No kidding.
McDaniels interfered and they didn't get him.
Wow. Crazy stuff. That's crazy. In a surprise statement from Schefter yesterday, reporting that Aaron Rodgers has been designated to return from the IR. Crazy news when you think that this is a torn Achilles we are talking about here. If this is legit, I think I'll be spending my off seasons in the woods healing like Aaron Rodgers.
I don't think you want to go down ayahuasca road, but yeah, it is legit. He was at practice. They took him. They opened his practice window, and he's scheduled to come back for week 16, 17, and 18, depending on where the Jets are.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to hit his threshold of giving the Packers a first round pick. They're going to get a second round pick because he won't have played 65% of the snaps. He's not going to get to that threshold even if he does play those last 3 games. But I'm a competitive person. You're a competitive person. We're both athletes, have been athletes for our entire lives. Rodgers would be my younger brother, right around your age, I think. And as athletes, we want to be out there. I wrecked my knee one year playing baseball, and my goal was to get on the field before the season was over. So last game of the season, I'm out there taking at bats with a huge full leg brace and like hobbling myself down to first base because I was getting base hits. You need to get out there, regardless of what the ramifications are, what it means for the season or whatever. You're a competitor. You want to be on that field. So I think he's going to, whether the Jets are in it or out.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it might be just another ploy too of him getting some attention drawn to him and his legacy. Him stating I was ready to go out there, all that kind of stuff. Even though the Jets, they're let's face it, they've scored under a touchdown a game here, guys. What's the point of him going out in the first place? Like, let's save him for next year. It's just to say I was ready to go out there, in my opinion. I think this is all smoke. I can't see him going out there at all.
Okay. Well, I'm picking him up in any league that I can. So
Have fun
I'm
with
getting
that.
ready
Yeah.
for that week 16, week 17 bounce in the playoffs. So let's go.
All right.
Hashtag NorCal. Come on.
All right. Bailey Zappi gets the start this week when the Patriots play the Chargers. This is an interesting situation because this is a game that the Chargers will probably lose for some reason. Playing in New England should be a tough game for them. I like the way the Stevenson has been playing. I thought that Douglas would be in this game too. So that might damper the situation, but Bailey Zappi, interesting situation with Mac Jones there. I thought that Cunningham would get the nod. Let's let that younger player play. What are your thoughts?
I picked up Zappi in my 5 quarterback league because I had Mac Jones, just trying to cover buys and little thises and that's. But yeah, I don't necessarily like Bailey Zappi or the situation in New England. I mean, who is he going to throw to? Devontae Parker and Devontae Parker and Demario Douglas, basically. The Demario Douglas news was kind of disheartening for me because I wanted to start him. However, he missed practice today, and it's a head injury. So
it's a concussion.
He's got to clear everything. If he goes, he's a good play. If not, he's not a good play.
Well, I actually had him as a start of the week heading into today, and then I just took him right off of it because of that fact that he was injured with that head injury. 20% of players, or it's like I think it's 22% of players return the following week from a concussion. So it doesn't look good for him. So, but if he does play, he's in a good spot there against a Chargers defense, pass defense that has been really, really sus. Wow. This week, we actually get the 49ers and Eagles.
Woo.
And this is a game in Philadelphia where the number one team in the NFL is a 2.5 point underdog. Like, what does Vegas know that I don't? Like, what's happening here? It's a
I
weather
th-
game. Like,
I think that line has more to do with um, the two teams going at it than it, and what how they want the betting to go, rather than like they're trying to get money put on the Eagles. But typically, a home team will have a 3 point advantage right out of the gate. So for
exactly.
them to be a 2.5 point dog, that means that they're looking at the Niners to win by a touchdown.
Yeah.
So it might just be like points scored thing. I don't know. Phillies looked pretty good. Their defense doesn't look quite as stout as the Niners defense, but um, their run defense is top of the league. So um, you never know. As far as I know, McCaffrey's a fade in DFS. He's still gonna put up RB1 numbers in PPR fantasy, but um, I wouldn't count on him being a major part of that game.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're coming from that area. You obviously know those teams better than I do. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just thought that was a very interesting line when, you know, a team that is the number one team only lost once, coming off of a couple really big wins against the Chiefs and last week, the Bills. Like, pretty impressive to be a dog at home against a team that really, has sputtered around. Like they've looked great at times, like they did against the Cowboys, but then they've looked sus as well. So interesting line. So I'm interested to see what that game looks like. That's the one I've got circled on the calendar. It's too bad because that Bengal Jacksonville Jaguars game would have been nice to see if Burrow would have been healthy as well.
It could have been, yeah.
What could have been, right? Now
What
we've
could have
got
been?
Bimagaddon. You mentioned about it earlier.
Bye,
Uh,
McGinnon.
Week 12 gave us 0 buys. Week 13 brings us a whopping 6. Wow. Thankfully, after this week, we only have 2 teams left with buys, and that's Arizona and Washington. This week, however, we have the Ravens, the Bills, the Bears, the Raiders, the Vikings, and the Giants all having their bye. With a ton of fantasy playoff spots up for grabs, this week will hurt a lot of fantasy managers' chances of getting into the playoffs. Hey, Brandon, how are you doing? How are your teams looking headed into this pivotal week?
Well, my fishbowl team, like I said at the top, I made the second round of the playoffs, and I have my number one pick, my number two pick, my number three pick, and the kicker four all on bye this week. So Lamar was my number one pick, so he's my top scoring quarterback. Josh
Mhm.
Jacobs was my number three pick. TJ Hawkinson was my number two pick. They're all out. So I'm missing my top three scorers. Tyler Bass, my kicker, is out. So I've had to kind of make some moves and stuff. I'm hoping that Jared Goff and Sam Howell can cover the
Yeah.
quarterback position. Um, Brees and James Conner, I'm hoping to hell that Brees plays and he and Connor can pick up the RB position. I'm not hurt at wide receiver, so that's the only thing. Plus, with last week's result, I raised my weekly average, so that gives me a little bit more cushion.
Mhm.
And the other thing is there are other guys who are on bye too. So hopefully I'm going to be able to sneak through. If I can sneak through this week, I should be in pretty good shape for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I knew that I hoped that I was going to make the playoffs, but I didn't expect my team to make a deep run. So at this point, I'm just happy to be here. But the more success you find, the more hope that you get, and the
Yeah.
more you don't want it to end. And then as far as my other leagues, I'm in a good position with my playoff teams. Um, I've done enough roster moving to put myself in position to absorb those things. It's the fishbowl that really where I really have the biggest deficit. But we'll see. Marvelous pigs in satin.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm in the same position with my fishbowl team. I actually was surprised waking up Tuesday morning and sneaking in because of such a low scoring game on Monday night. It actually saved me because my team was struggling too. Actually, this week I have a full squad because I'm finally through all my buys. So this might actually help me this week. Um, I lost some key players for a lot of the season as well. So this is a surprise for me to get to where I am. I'm happy where I am, and like now it's all gravy. I made the playoffs. That was my one
Yeah.
goal. Now I'm in round 2, crying
Yeah.
out loud. Like round 2 of the fishbowl, huge first year. Love it.
Well,
Congratulations, Brandon. That's awesome.
thank you. You too. And let's not be dark clouds. We're going around 3, baby.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
All right. Let's just plow through these injuries because they're depressing, and then let's get
Go.
into the juicy part of this. Okay.
They don't stop. They don't ever stop.
Well, let's just plow through them. Let's go. So Jonathan Taylor is now out 2 to 3 weeks with his hand injury. Zach Moss, owners rejoicing after a bad break. Just when Taylor was starting to really catch some steam, he was getting a lot of run there. Last week had 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately for your call there, I'm sorry, I had to bring that one up, but he had a great game against a tough defense, and now he's out for 2 to 3 weeks. So those fantasy managers are stung after that one.
Yep, go.
All right, Chris Olave, concussion. He actually might play. He was playing on the sidelines today in practice, so that is actually a good sign. But they say that 25% of people that suffered a concussion will not play the following week. So be interesting to see what happens there. I know that you've got some interesting stuff to say about the Saints and their passing offense in your starts and sits. So I'll kind of hold off on that. But we'll also talk about Rashid Shaheed, who also has a thigh injury. He was the first wide receiver to go down in that game on Sunday. I'm thinking he might miss a week, but who knows? The injury report saying that he practiced in limited fashion, I think, today. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Yep. Spoiler alert. Go.
Yeah. Amari Cooper, Cleveland Browns, rib injury. He practiced today. He was back at practice, bearing a setback. He should play this week. Should be more of a pain tolerance thing. So we'll see what happens with him moving forward. Then we got another Brown injury with that concussion with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Prepare for Joe Flacco, of all people. Looks like we'll be playing this week, taking first team reps. I'm going to take a breather here and let you talk about Joe.
Well, I mean, they say hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But I think in the Browns case this week, it's prepare for the best, hope for the best. Because Joe Flacco, like, the dude knows what he's doing. And if I recall correctly, there was just a trade in a pretty important league that we have where I'm kind of like looking for good draft picks. And somebody else I know is on a playoff run. And I just traded Amari Cooper to him for Tyjae Spears and Jaden Reed moving forward. And so I'm hoping that Amari Cooper is able to play and Joe Flacco can get him the ball. And my boy Mike Greinberg has a big week in our Dynasty Pros Campus to Canton Riders League.
Yeah, man, I need a big week there. I made a little bit of a move. I'm on the cusp there. I had a tough start to the year, but Kyler Murray coming back has kind of bolted my team up a bit. Kyron Williams coming back off the IR has really helped that team up as well. So made a couple moves to win now, it looks like, bringing on Raheem Mostert and Amari Cooper for a youngster team for yourself like Tyjae Spears and Jaden Reed. So, it's an even trade, helps us both out. We'll see what happens. And you never know. There's a couple solid teams there, but any given setting, right, man?
Yeah, that's it. Or Monday or Thursday.
One more injury we're going to touch base on here is Devon Achane. His knee injury, he's been limited in practice all week, so you should really be looking at those injury reports over the weekend to see if he's actually going to play. Jeff Wilson looked pretty decent last week, and in a game where the Dolphins should be up pretty big going into that second half, I am not sure they're going to want to even, risk it with Achane yet. So I could see them resting him another week and giving Mostert and Wilson some run, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's go Wilson. I had a league where I didn't have a running back. Just Mageddon killed me. I think I'm sitting on Saquon and Josh Jacobs, and I really was in a desperate spot, and so I traded Darren Waller, and I got back Jeff Wilson. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that Jeff Wilson can have himself a game.
Did you just say that? Did you say Wilson? See what happens?
No,
that was a good pun. That was great.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. It was like you scripted that or something. It was perfect.
I didn't. All right. So Studleys and Dudleys, how's that sound?
Let's do it.
We need like little fanfare and like videos for all this stuff, but we don't have a producer, so I'm on the buttons. All right, my first Studley is going to be Ramondre, and that's a hard H. Ramondre Stevenson, who finished last week as RB7, and I told you to start him, so I hope that you did that. Did you do that?
Did you do it? Yeah, that was a good call. Yeah, I like him. He's been playing well lately, and not going to get too much into the spoiler alerts, but maybe
he's about the only thing going on in New England at this point.
Exactly. So Grindberg's Studley call last week was Isaiah Pacheco. He cashed all the checks on Sunday, rushing for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, adding another 5 catches for 35 yards in his best game of the year, and he's headed for another monster week this week. Isaiah Pacheco was the RB4 last week, so nice call on my behalf there.
That was a hell of a day. All right. And as for the Dudleys, I regret to inform you that I have a Dudley this week, and that Dudley would be JT, Jonathan Taylor. Again, I was a week early. Don't start Jonathan Taylor this week. But last week, you shouldn't have listened to me. I mean, he was going against a good run defense and Tampa Bay, and he showed out. So, he's shown himself to be like one of those matchup-proof talents, and I just got wrapped up in the analytics of everything.
And it
but I stand by my choice.
Stand by your man. All right, so Grindberg's Dudley call last week was Jerome Ford. He played the Broncos run defense last week, and actually the Broncos defense outside of that Miami game has been really, really good, and the Broncos have actually been coming on pretty hard, winning 5 in a row, so look out. I'm no longer taking that Bronco defense for granted. The Broncos held Ford to just 65 scoreless yards on the ground, so not a horrible showing, but definitely not a stardom call.
Well, the Broncos defense is going to show up a little bit later in the program, so we might be on different pages with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I know you guys are watching this to see what kind of future prognostication that Grindberg and I can bring to you and win you your league. So if you're in the playoffs, because some playoffs have started already, then we've got some people to start for you. Boo. If you're not in the playoffs, but you're trying to get there because some of the playoffs start next week, and here we go. So my first start of the week is a twofer. So I have Rashid Shaheed, I have the Need for Speed, and A.T. Perry. Now, let's talk about the Saints for a second. Now, Derek Carr is a disappointment. He has been a disappointment. He is a disappointment. In fact, the only positives coming out of New Orleans this season have been Kamara since he came back, and Olave. Olave is in the concussion protocol this week and may not make it out of the concussion protocol. So you want to be flexible and look at what's going on in New Orleans in case Olave doesn't play. Michael Thomas is hurt. The Saints face the Detroit Lions. Now, I'm focused on this game, not just because it's my 2 favorite quarterbacks, hashtag Nevada Boys, hashtag NorCal, but because this game is projected by Vegas to have the highest point pace of the week. What's that smell, Mike? You smell? What's that? Shootout. I smell a shootout. Now, if Olave doesn't play, Rashid Shaheed and A.T. Perry will be the guys. Okay. Detroit ostensibly has the NFC's 3 seed. They'll likely have an early lead, and they're more vulnerable against the pass than the run. They allow 13 passing yards per game against the average versus negative 18 rushing yards per game against the average. This means that Derek Carr will be playing catch-up ball, which is where he's at his best. I've watched the guy his entire career. He's best when he's behind. I can see him throwing upwards of 50 times in this game. He's done that twice this season. He's had games of 50 attempts and 55 attempts. Those targets have to get spread around. Kamara, Juwan Johnson, spoiler alert, and the wide receivers will be in the range of 10 targets apiece. The healthiest, here's the key, the healthiest of the wide receivers will benefit from this. So follow the news until Sunday morning. Start Shaheed if he's playing, and if he's not, start A.T. Perry. Hope for Chris Olave to get in, because I know you already have Chris Olave as one of your top wide receivers. You need to fill in. Rashid Shaheed is on your bench. A.T. Perry is probably on the waiver wire. One of those two guys you're going to want to slot in, and it's Shaheed if he's playing or Perry if Shaheed isn't.
Okay. All this talk about ketchup. Like, do you put ketchup on hot dogs?
As a rule, no. Has it happened before? Yes.
So why is it a rule?
Because as a culinary gatekeeper, I feel like there are specific ingredients that are targeted for hot dogs / sausages, mustard, pickles, onions. If you want to get into the Chicago style dogs, sport peppers, relish is fine. I tend to prefer a dill relish to a sweet relish. Ketchup is great for dipping fries, and it's good as like an ingredient in making some sauces. But unless you're 12 years old or younger, you really should only be putting ketchup on hamburgers. If you're 12 or under, like, put it on hot dogs, put it on scrambled eggs. But other than that, if it's a potato-based thing, that's ketchup is fine. But hot dogs, you want mustard, you want onions, you want pickles, you want sauerkraut, things like that, not ketchup. However, there is an iteration of a hot dog that every once in a while I'm like, I want this, and it's a hot dog with American cheese and ketchup on it, kind of like a hamburger, only with a hot dog as the meat. And so, yeah, as a rule, I don't, but every once in a while, it's a nice little change up.
Good, I love that.
What I love is that you knew that if you threw that question out there, you're going to get some kind of content out of it. That's fantastic.
Oh. All right, all right. So my first start of the week is Ramondre Stevenson versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Stevenson is finally taking control of the Patriot backfield, and last week was the game that he did it. Stevenson played his highest snap share of the season, playing 78% of the snaps versus the 22% that Zeke played. Stevenson had one of his better games, as well as running 21 times for 98 yards and a touchdown. He was also heavily involved in the short passing game, catching 5 balls. Now Stevenson gets the Chargers in a game Belichick will surely be trying to slow the high-flying Charger offense down by running the ball. The Chargers give up 114 yards per game on the ground, and it can easily be exposed in this game. Look for Stevenson to have another big game this week.
Chargers going to Charger. If I'm Bill Belichick, I'm not worried about it much, just because I know who I'm playing. All right, my second start is going to be, well, we'll put it this way. We'll keep the negative game script theme going with Folsom, California legend Jake Browning, #NorCal, chucking it against the Jacksonville Jags. Spoiler alert, stay tuned for the sits. But Jacksonville is going to control the line of scrimmage and the run game. They're going to shut down Cincy. They're going to have a lead. They're going to force JB2, right? Because Joe Burrow is JB.
Ah, yes.
Browning is JB2. They're going to force JB2 to throw. JB2 hasn't looked like a huge buy over the last 2 weeks, but the Ravens and Steelers are better against the pass than the Jags. JB2 had a 73% completion percentage against Pittsburgh. So if he has to throw more against lesser coverage and he repeats his success, he's a high volume play. JB2 will be thrown to Jamar and Higgins. And while the tight end position in Cincy is a hard avoid, Tanner Hudson has emerged as the leader in that room. In Superflex, we're talking By-Mageddon. We're talking desperation. We're talking Jake Browning.
Yeah, I don't mind that. He actually didn't look too bad last week. Honestly, he didn't look bad at all. So this could be his game where he, refocuses here. And like you said, By-Mageddon happens and there's a lot of injuries and also a lot of buys. So yeah, I don't mind that call, especially in Superflex. Let's go.
Might he throw 2 interceptions? Sure.
Yeah, probably.
But he could easily throw 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Exactly. So my next start is Josh Downs versus the Titans. He's been okay since, catching passes last week. He caught 5 of them for 43 yards. Not great stats, but if you dig a little bit deeper, he actually had 13 targets in that game and has been consistently been Gardner Minshew's second read all season. Downs will continue earning a high target share for the Colts this week when he faces a weaker pass defense in the Titans, who rank 18th against the pass this year. The Titans are vulnerable in their secondary, and I think Downs will be a good play this week.
Mm-hmm. And for all you players in Dynasty, if you are holding on to Michael Pittman and Josh Downs and you're not in the playoff picture, offload them now, because their value came from not having Anthony Richardson this season and having Gardner Minshew. So you heard it here. Get rid of those guys. Not that they're bad. And Michael Pittman is like, he's one of the more underrated wide receiver ones out there. But if Richardson comes back fully healthy next year and plays, then their target share is just going to kind of disappear. So yeah, I love those guys. Help somebody out in your maybe make a deal. Say like, hey, give me some draft picks. I'll give you these 2 guys, and we'll split the winnings. No, don't do that. Do not do that. Collusion is wrong. Okay.
I actually like Downs' outlook in the future, and you're going to see that in an upcoming Dynasty Dilemma I'm talking about here. Okay, so
nice.
I'm going to talk about that in that situation with Anthony Richardson. And that whole situation, they're going to pass the ball less, absolutely. But if you look at his target share with Richardson and with Minshew, it's not that far off. Actually, Downs was getting, in 2 games with Richardson, he saw 12 plus targets in 2 of those games. So I'm seeing a good situation there for a slot receiver. Pittman, on the other hand, might see a little bit of downfall because that he is getting a lot of those targets from Minshew. And I think if there is somebody that's going to take a downfall with Richardson coming back, it might be Pittman over Downs.
Okay. Well, you know this about me. I'm never afraid to be wrong. And that's something that was off the cuff and I didn't really analyze that much. So like I'm going to defer to you on this and say that, yeah, maybe I'm totally wrong in on that front, which leads me into my next start, because it's a come to the football gods moment for me right now. I'm never afraid to be wrong, and I'm never afraid to admit when I was wrong. My third start this week is Devin Singletary. I know what I said last week, and I was wrong. Singletary has taken over that backfield. I thought Pierce was going to come back and get most of the carries. They're going with the hot hand, and that's totally fine. I didn't see that coming. I misplayed it. This week, I'm going with Devin Singletary. He took over that backfield that is playing Denver this week. I know Mike talked about earlier how Denver has kind of buckled up a little bit, but Denver offers great value. Walmart joke, as they appear to roll back their defense and enjoy giving up rushing yards in big chunks. They're a big play defense. Hey, Mike, pop quiz, hot shot. Who gives up the most points to opposing running backs?
The Broncos.
That's right. Like the thirsty man in Alberta that I talked about before, we're going back to that well. Devin Singletary. Just like I just did with my reference about going back to the well, about my back to the well reference that I did before.
I love it. Love it. I mean, he's playing lights out. And people were wondering about how, with Dameon Pierce back in the game, how it would look like, like it's Singletary's backfield to lose now after what we saw last week. So I like this call. I think he's playing lights out, and it's those yards after the catch with him that is so impressive. So we'll see what happens. I like the call this week, man.
Little NBA Jam impression. He's got a hot hand.
He does. All right. Speaking of hot hands, we'll talk about my next start is Rachaad White versus the Panthers. White was a late add to the injury report last weekend with a knee injury. It looked like it seized up in practice. White played and had a great game, running for 100 yards on the ground. The Bucs are in the thick of the race for the divisional lead in the NFC South. The Panthers just fired Frank Reich and are in disarray. The Panthers are a bad team versus the run, giving up 124 yards a game, ranking 24th in the league. Look for the Bucs to control the clock in this game, heavily involving White. This is a game that will get the Bucs right in the thick of the playoff race. Look for White to continue his great season and finish this week within the top 10 running backs, I'd say.
Woo, let's go. Wheels up. Yeah, I can't wait for Bill Belichick to take over in Carolina.
Yeah, that's the rumor, right?
Well, not yet. When they start talking about Belichick looking for property around Raleigh, then you can remember that you heard it here first.
You heard it from your lips.
They mentioned it on the Pat McAfee show this week, and when they said that, I was like, I talked about it on the weekend warm-up last week. I think I did. Anyway. All right, time for the sits. My first sit this week is going to be Joe, don't hit me, Mixon. Hey, Mike, pop quiz, hot shot.
What's up?
Guess who's the opposite of the Broncos and gives up the fewest points to running backs?
The Eagles.
No, it's the Eagles.
The Eagles.
But the Jaguars are third best. Joe Mixon didn't really do much last week. That was in a game that the Bengals really needed to come out and show. But they didn't, and Mixon didn't. And this week they're playing a tougher run defense in the Jaguars. And Joe Mixon is happily on my bench.
Yeah, he's on my bench too, and I think he's on my bench almost for the rest of the year. I'm hearing rumblings in the Bengal locker room area. From what I hear, is that they might be giving Chase Brown some ride now. They want to see what this rookie has. Joe Mixon has been, he committed to next year, but there's nothing really committing him for long term. I mean, maybe with this Burrow injury, they might see how this Chase Brown looks in pass protection or, on third down rolls. So we'll see what happens. Like I could see Mixon taking less snaps now. He's used to his workhorse role and he's been highly ineffective in that position this year. So if you take some of those carries away, which is the reason why you're starting him, is the opportunity, it just makes him less, worthy of a start for me. So I like
Chase
that
Brown, Charlie Jones, Chase Brown, Charlie Jones, Chase Brown, Charlie Jones. Remember those two names.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens moving forward here. All right. So my first sit of the night is Miles Sanders versus the Buccaneers. Miles Sanders, since coming back from the injury, has taken a backseat to Chuba Hubbard. The roles were reversed prior to the Sanders injury. So Sanders has one of the lowest snap counts of the season last week, a trend that is looking to be the norm. The Bucs are a very good run defense, only giving up 96 yards per game. With the way that Chuba has taken over that backfield and the fact they are playing the Bucs, I'm sitting Miles Sanders. He's almost waiver wire worthy at this stage, I'm thinking.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting Chuba because he catches passes, so I'm hoping that he has a Jonathan Taylor game against the Bucks.
Nice.
Anyway, all right. My next set is going to be Matthew Stafford. Now, Stafford was a value at his ADP in Superflex leagues. He was typically drafted as a QB3, and during Bimageddon, the fact that he's QB19 and has only had 1 week finishing outside of the top 24, that looks good.
Mm-hmm.
This week, though, he faces the Browns. If you have another alternative, especially in single quarterback leagues, go with your alternative.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of variables there. I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens. But I like that call. And my next sit is Drake London versus the Jets. This game will be ugly when the two of the best young running backs face off in a defensive / field position battle. Drake London had a pretty good game last week in Ritter's first game back as the starter, going 5 for 91 against a middle of the pack passing defense. This week, London will face Sauce Gardner and the 6th ranked defense versus the pass. I am not looking Drake London's way this week. I think it's going to be a tough battle in a really low scoring game. So I would look elsewhere if I could.
Yep. The Falcons are going to run the ball, and they're going to run the ball a lot, and they're going to be successful at it. Ritter's going to run with it. Algiers going to have some run with it, and Bijan is going to have another game. So I totally am on board with you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My final sit, and I notice you're not wearing the hat this week. Any Chiefs pass catcher not named Travis. I know this is another combo meal. And I'm not really going out on a limb this right here. I'll do that later. But it's officially time to stop talking about wide receiver 35 Rashee Rice. It's officially time to stop hoping for a wide receiver 76 Justin Watson to have a spike. It's officially time to stop rolling the dice on wide receiver 85 Sky Moore. And those are the 3 best Chiefs wide receivers. 35, that's a flex play. 76 and 85, out of flex contention. The Chiefs' 5 top wide receivers have 1 top 12 week combined among all 5 of them. 1 top 12 week. Not each. Not 1 top 12 week each. 1 combined through 5 wide receivers. That was Rice last week. He's the one. He was wide receiver 3 last week. That was the one. It's not to say that none of them can have another week like that. They certainly can because, I mean, we are talking about Mahomes, but we're also talking about Maotto. And there is no reason to try and roll the dice on if any of them are actually going to do it the rest of the year. It's just too much of a fuddled wide receiver room. And I didn't even bring up MVS or Kadarius Toney. They weren't even worthy of talking about whether they could do it or not. But could they? Yeah, sure. One of them could have a 15, 20-point game. Any one of the five can. But if Travis Kelce is there and Mahomes is there, one of the 5 is going to do good. And it's not worth trying to figure out who it's going to be this week. Sit them all.
All right. I let you have that one. I'm sure that, you're venting from the game last weekend.
No.
It's all good. It's all good in the hood. We're fine. No. I agree with that. I mean, like, it's in Lambeau too.
All right. Okay. Addendum. Don't start Trey Tucker and don't start Hunter Renfrow this week too. So we'll throw some Raiders in there.
Yeah. I love it. All good, man. Well, I'm gonna sit somebody on the opposite end of that field. Then I'm gonna sit Christian Watson versus my Chiefs. That feels good to say. All right. After coming off his best game of the season, Watson went 5 for 91 and a touchdown in the Packers' impressive win over the Lions on Thanksgiving. Many think this Packer offense is turning a corner with how well they played versus the Lions. I'll start believing that when they can do that when they face my Chiefs, who are fourth versus the pass, only giving up 176 yards per game. McDuffie and Snead have been shutting down opposing wide receivers, and they will continue to do it this week on Sunday Night Football.
Not named Devontae or Jacoby. I'm a heavy Jaden Reed investor. I mean, I just traded for him from you, and I'm also a heavy Jordan Love investor, and I'm not playing either of those this week. All of the Green Bay period this week, maybe with the exception of AJ Dillon, is a total fade everywhere for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, you like fishing?
Yeah.
Where do you like to fish?
Ever been ice fishing before?
No.
Yeah. All right.
Where do you like to fish?
In the lakes.
In lakes? What do you like fishing in the? Where else do you like to fish?
In the dark.
How about in the streams? It's time for the streams.
We're not fishing in the dark anymore? Come on, man.
No, I love fishing in the dark. My favorite fishing, though, however, is catfishing, because you set up a trot line with like 3 hooks. You put chicken livers on each of the hooks, and you throw it out, and you just let it sit, and you drink beers, and then a couple hours later, you reel it in, and you got 3 catfish on your hooks. It's the best fishing.
All right.
Yeah. Well, it's the best catching. It's not the best fishing.
Fishing.
Because
there you go.
You don't go catching, you go fishing. But that's going catching. All right. My tight end streamer this week.
Yeah.
Juwan Johnson. We talked about the Saints earlier, so I don't need to go into the matchup. It's a good one. Juwan Johnson is back. The Saints are all receiving hands on deck. Johnson will finish in the tight end top 12 this week. You've been waiting patiently, and there it is. That is your Big Boned's big ball call of the week. Juwan Johnson is going to finish in the tight end top 12 this week.
Yeah, and we have no idea who is going to be in that offense on Sunday, so I'm also going to go with the other tight end on the other. Well, I guess he's classified as a tight end, but he could be anything next weekend. So he's an athlete, and his name is Taysom Hill, and he will be all over the field. He'll have a huge game because he'll get touches from all over, and with the potential no Olave, potentially no Shaheed. We're not sure about that, but I'm thinking Hill's going to have a big one this week.
Let's go, Taysom.
All right. What's the D? What's the low D?
My streaming defense, and keep in mind these are defenses that are out of the top 12 right now, because in one of my leagues I'm starting your streaming defense, and they're not out of the top 12.
Mm-hmm.
Mine are out of the top 12.
Okay.
I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Frank Reich is gone, and I'm an advocate of the fired head coach bump. So Carolina could wind up winning this game. But this game is going to be a slog. The Bucs' run defense is legit, and their pass defense will be ample against Bryce Young. Bryce Young.
Bryce Busty Bust?
Busty Young. Now, Tampa Bay is going to, it's not going to be pretty for Carolina. Again, I am an advocate for the fired head coach bump. I called it with the Raiders. I saw it when Indianapolis did it with Jeff Saturday. It's a thing. It's really a thing. So, again, Carolina could win this game. They could win this game 9-6. That's good points for your defense. I see Bryce Young throwing a couple picks. Tampa Bay is my streaming defense this week.
All right, I'm gonna go with another defense that's playing another rookie quarterback, and that's just kind of like the MO right now for me is looking for those rookie quarterbacks that are playing decent defenses, and I'm gonna go with the Indianapolis Colts because they're playing Will Levis in the Tennessee Titans this week, so that'll be my streamer of the week. Lock it in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's for those of you who stream defenses, it's always a good play to go against a rookie quarterback.
It is.
So
It
yeah.
is. All right, man. That's it for us. We wrapped it up a bit quicker, little midstream here, right? So thanks
Hey,
everybody.
longer than last week, but not quite over the hour mark. So
That's
I
perfect.
think this is the sweet spot.
I agree with that. I think that's a sweet spot. So thanks everybody. The weekend warm up for week 13 is now ready to go for the Dynasty Pros Football Network. Thanks everybody for the support. The show is always growing, and we love to hear feedback. So please comment and share and like, and please note, subscribe. It means the world to us. Brandon, you want to remind everybody where they can find you?
I sure do. I'm on Twitter at BigBonedFFB. You can find that right there. YouTube at BigBonedFFB. Check out my podcast, The Fantasy Burn. I got a couple things in the works. Guest named Casey Kasem.
No way.
Working on that. And look for me on Monday on the Monday Meltdown live stream with special guests, the Weekend Review and Shenanigans. Fold it all in Substack. Big Boned FFB, and of course, dynastyprosfootball.com/author/Big Boned. That's where you can find me and mine.
All right, and me, you could find me on Twitter or the X at FFCanuck99. All my written content at dynastyprosfootball.com. And I'm currently the Kansas City Chiefs creator for the High Point Creator Network. And I'm hanging out with you with player profiler covering the Chiefs and Broncos for the newsroom. So a lot going on with us, and playoffs around the corner here for fantasy teams. We're excited to help you along the way. We're pretty sure that most of you are headed into the playoffs looking strong because you've been following us for the last weeks and months here. So continue that. We love the support. Hope you win this week. Brandon, you want to sign us off here, bud?
Hey, the DMs are open. If you need any advice, go ahead and hit us up. Also, if you happen to be in Davis, California at any point, DMs are open. If you happen to be in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, DMs are open. And thank you guys for hopping in. Thank you for doing all of the things that you're going to do. And I hope you win.
Hope you win. Have a great weekend.